Welcome to Crimes of Passion. In this episode, we delve into the tragic and intricate narrative of Richard Engelbert, a prosperous real estate agent whose concealed life ultimately led to his brutal murder. Richard Engelbert, a 48-year-old resident of Littleton, Colorado, was a prominent figure in the local real estate scene, frequently seen cruising in his sleek black car, adorned with the license plate, Sexy Realtor. He was known for showcasing homes to eager clients, married to Wendy, a school principal. He also had a stepson named Harrison, a graduate of the University of Colorado with a degree in business. Richard boasted over 2 decades of experience in real estate. His friendly demeanor and reliability earned him the trust of many in the community. Richard lived in an expansive 2-story home with a meticulously maintained lawn. Neighbors often spotted him tending to his yard, greeting them with a warm smile and wave. Actively participating in local events and charity fundraisers, he frequently sponsored youth sports teams and attended church every Sunday to outsiders. Richard appeared to lead an idyllic life, complete with a beautiful home, a thriving career, and a loving family. Beneath this fade of perfection, however, lay a dark secret for the past 2 years. Richard had been engaged in a sexual relationship with his stepson. A fact he kept hidden from everyone due to fears that it would tarnish his reputation and career. Additionally, he sought out other men for sexual encounters through his work, using the homes he showcased as covert meeting spots. This double life created immense stress for Richard. In the days leading up to his death, Richard was consumed by work closing deals and meeting clients, often returning home late after long hours at the office. He looked forward to an upcoming weekend getaway to the Bahamas with Wendy, hoping it would provide an opportunity to relax and escape his troubles. He was also planning to attend a 4th of July barbecue at a friend's house to reconnect with old friends and enjoy some respite from his demanding life. Richard's friends described him as charismatic and charming. He had a unique ability to make others feel valued and comfortable, yet beneath this friendly exterior lay deep turmoil stemming from his hidden life. He grappled with guilt over his affair with Harrison and the deceit necessary to maintain it. The fear of Wendy discovering his secrets haunted him as he worried it would shatter their marriage and jeopardize his standing in the community. On June 27, 2014, around 3 p.m., Wendy Engelbert returned home early from her job as a school principal, anticipating a relaxing evening filled with Netflix shows and some reading. She entered their house on Bleak Street in Littleton, Colorado. Initially, everything seemed normal. She placed her keys on the kitchen counter and called out for Richard, but received no response. Feeling an unsettling sense of unease, Wendy decided to check the basement where Richard often worked on real estate files or watched the History Channel. As she descended the stairs, she noticed that the basement door was slightly ajar, an unusual sight. Calling out for him again, but louder this time, yielded no answer. As Wendy reached the bottom of the stairs, she was met with a scene of unimaginable horror. Richard's lifeless body lay sprawling on the floor, surrounded by clear signs of a violent struggle. Blood stained the carpet and furniture, and Richard's face bore the marks of a brutal beating. A luxury minute's belt was tightly wrapped around his neck, clearly used to strangle him. In a state of terror, Wendy screamed and rushed to Richard's side, shaking him desperately in a futile attempt to wake him. Realizing it was too late, she was engulfed in shock and disbelief. Trembling, she grabbed her cell phone and dialed 911, her voice breaking with emotion as she cried out, "My husband is dead. I think he has been murdered." The operator tried to calm her and instructed her to remain on the line until help arrived. Wendys neighbor, Lebby Johnson, heard the commotion and rushed over to see what was happening. She found Wendy sitting on the front steps, sobbing uncontrollably. Lebby stayed by Wendy's side, offering comfort while they awaited the police. Each passing minute felt like an eternity as Wendy's mind raced with questions about who could have committed such a horrific act and why. When the police finally arrived, they quickly secured the scene and escorted Wendy and Lebby away from the basement, overwhelmed by shock. Wendy struggled to comprehend the reality of her husband's death. Repeatedly asking who would do this to Richard, her mind was unable to process the brutal truth unfolding before her. The discovery of Richard's body sent shockwaves through the quiet community of Littleton. News of the murder spread rapidly, drawing neighbors and friends to gather outside the Engelbert home, trying to make sense of the tragedy that had befallen their seemingly perfect neighborhood. At 3:15 p.m. on June 27, 2014, the Littleton Police Department received Wendy's frantic 911 call. Officers arrived at the scene within minutes, led by Detective James Cattle, a seasoned investigator known for his meticulous approach. The Engelbert home on Oak Street quickly became surrounded by police cars as yellow crime scene tape marked off the perimeter. Detective Cattle and his team entered the basement to confront the grisly scene. Richard Engelbert's body lay on the floor with a luxury belt still wrapped tightly around his neck. Bloodstains were evident on both the carpet and nearby furniture, indicating a fierce struggle had taken place. Detective Cattle, a man in his late 40s with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor, assessed the situation with steely resolve. The police began their investigation by meticulously collecting evidence. They photographed every angle of the scene to document crucial details. The belt used in the murder was carefully bagged as evidence while detectives searched for fingerprints and any other clues that might lead them to Richard's killer. Noticing overturned furniture and signs of a struggle, Detective Cattle understood that Richard had fought valiantly for his life. Forensic experts soon arrived to process the scene further, setting in motion an investigation that would uncover dark secrets hidden beneath Richard Engelbert's seemingly perfect life. The investigation into Richard Engelbert's murder intensified as forensic teams employed luminol to detect traces of blood and collected samples for DNA analysis. They meticulously combed the area for hair fibers and any other potential evidence. The brutality of the crime shocked even the most seasoned officer, but they remained focused on gathering every piece of information available. Detective James Cattle interviewed Wendy Engelbert, who was still reeling from the traumatic discovery of her husband's body. Her account was both detailed and emotional, yet she insisted she had no knowledge of who could have committed such a heinous act. Wendy's alibi was quickly verified. She had been at work during the time of the murder. Next, the police began canvassing the neighborhood, speaking with neighbors, including Lubby Johnson, who had rushed to Wendy's aid. Lubby described hearing Wendy's screams and finding her on the front step. Distraught and incoherent, other neighbors mentioned seeing Richard earlier that day, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. As part of their investigation, the police examined Richard's recent phone and email records in hopes of uncovering leads. They discovered several suspicious messages and calls indicating that Richard had been meeting various men for illicit encounter. This revelation added a new layer to the investigation, suggesting potential motives tied to Richard's hidden life. As day turned to evening, the police continued their diligent work, determined to find the individual responsible for Richard Engelbert's brutal murder. The scene was eventually cleared, and Detective Cattle and his team reviewed the evidence collected, preparing for the next steps in their investigation. The community of Littleton watched anxiously, hoping for answers and justice for Richard Engelbert. The first suspect in Richard Engelbert's murder was his wife, Wendy Engelbert, at 47 years old. Wendy was a respected school principal in Littleton. Known for her intelligence and strong personality, with over 15 years in the school district, she was heavily involved in community activities and was described by colleagues as dedicated and authoritative. Wendy was brought in for questioning on June 28, 2014, day after Richard's murder. Detective James Cattle led the interrogation, aiming to piece together her actions and emotions surrounding the tragic event. Although she appeared exhausted and distraught, Wendy answered questions calmly. She recounted her day at work and the horrifying moment she found Richard's body upon returning home. Despite her composed demeanor, Wendy's anger and confusion were evident as she expressed disbelief and frustration over Richard's affair. She insisted she had no idea that he was involved with other men. This revelation added tension to the interrogation as Detective Cattle probed deeper into Wendy's feelings about her husband's betrayal. When asked about her relationship with Richard, Wendy admitted they had a strong partnership but acknowledged facing some challenges recently. She claimed ignorance regarding Richard's secret life, attributing her lack of awareness to a recent skiing injury that had impaired her ability to read people's behaviors. Wendy's alibi remained solid. She had been at school all day, attending meetings and preparing for the upcoming academic year. Her colleagues and security footage confirmed her presence during the time of the murder. Nevertheless, her connection to Richard made her a person of interest in the investigation. Detective Cattle also explored possible motives related to Wendy's reputation and career. Both were crucial to her identity, and Richard's affair threatened them. However, Wendy firmly denied any involvement in her husband's death, maintaining her innocence throughout the questioning process. Throughout the questioning, Wendy Engelbert maintained her innocence, remaining cooperative and providing all requested information, including access to her phone and email. The police conducted a thorough search of the Engelbert home for any evidence that could link her to the crime, but found nothing incriminating. This reinforced her alibi and statement. Nevertheless, detectives remained cautious, aware that intense emotions could drive even the most rational individuals to desperate acts. After several hours of questioning, Wendy was released but continued to be under scrutiny as the investigation progressed. Police kept a close watch on her interactions and movements while they explored other leads. The murder of Richard Engelbert was proving to be a complex case with layers of secrets and motives slowly unraveling. The next suspect was Harrison Engelbert, Richard's 21-year-old stepson, a college student and part-time bartender. Harrison had a troubled past, having been in and out of rehab and 12 step programs during his teenage years. Despite these challenges, he was determined to turn his life around and was pursuing a degree in psychology at a local community college. On June 28, 2014, Harrison was brought in for questioning. Detective James Cattle approached the interrogation with caution. Fully aware of the sensitive nature of Harrison's relationship with Richard, Harrison appeared nervous but cooperative, willing to share his side of the story. He admitted to being in a secret sexual relationship with his stepfather for the past 2 years, but expressed feelings of conflict over the deceit involved. Harrison revealed that he had recently ended the affair after discovering that Richard had been cheating on him with numerous other men, using homes he showcased as secret meeting places. During the interrogation, he exhibited a mix of anger and sadness, feeling betrayed not only by Richard's infidelity, but also by his lies and manipulation. Despite his resentment, Harrison insisted he had no intention of harming Richard. He claimed he had been bartending on the night of the murder, with several witnesses confirming his alibi. Detective Cattle delved deeper into Harrison's potential motives. The young man's history of emotional turmoil and substance abuse raised concerns, however. His recent efforts to stay sober and focus on his studies painted a different picture. Harrison was open about his struggles and expressed a desire to move away from his toxic relationship with Richard. The police also examined Harrison's electronic devices and social media accounts for any evidence of involvement in the crime. They discovered messages exchanged between him and Richard that indicated tension and conflict, but found nothing that directly implicated him in the murder. Although Harrison's DNA was found at the crime scene, expected since he lived in the house, his cooperation and consistent alibi made it challenging for law enforcement to pin the crime on him. After several hours of questioning, Harrison was released but remained a key figure in the investigation. Police continued to monitor his activities and interactions, searching for any inconsistencies or new evidence that might shed light on his involvement. The complex dynamics between Richard and Harrison added further layers to the case, leaving Detective Cattle and his team with more questions than answers as they dug deeper into the investigation. Alexa Hernandez emerged as the third suspect in this intricate case. She had a history with Richard Engelbert that made her a person of interest. Notably, she had once caught Richard having sex with her husband in a bathroom during a house tour they were attending together. This shocking incident led to the end of her marriage. Known for her fiery temper, Asa had several confrontations with Richard following that incident. Her emotional history with him positioned her as someone who might harbor deep resentment or anger towards him, raising questions about her potential motives in relation to Richard's murder. As investigators continued their work, they sought to uncover more about Alexa's interactions with Richard leading up to his death, while also keeping an eye on Wendy and Harrison as potential suspects in this tragic case. The web of relationships surrounding Richard Engelbert grew increasingly tangled as detectives worked tirelessly to reveal the truth behind his brutal murder. Following the incident on June 29, 2014, Detective James Cattle brought Alexa Hernandez in for questioning, a waitress at a popular local diner. Alexa was known for her outspoken and strong-willed nature. She entered the interrogation room with a defiant expression, prepared to defend herself against any accusation. Detective Cattle began by asking Alexa about her relationship with Richard Engelbert. She openly admitted to despising him for ruining her marriage and causing her immense emotional pain. Describing the day she discovered her husband with Richard as the worst day of her life, Alexa recounted how she confronted Richard multiple times afterward, demanding answers and an apology only to be brushed off each time. When questioned about her whereabouts on the day of the murder, Alyssa stated that she had been working a double shift at Denny's. She provided the names of coworkers who could verify her alibi. Detective Cattle promptly contacted the diner and spoke with Alexa's manager, who confirmed that she had been at work all day. Multiple coworkers corroborated seeing her during her shifts. Despite her solid alibi, Detective Cattle delved deeper into Alexa's possible motives. Her intense anger toward Richard was apparent, yet she insisted that she had moved on and was focused on rebuilding her life. Alexa mentioned that she was taking night classes at a local community college, aspiring to become a social worker to help others facing similar struggle. The police conducted searches of Alexa's home and car for any evidence linking her to the crime, but found nothing suspicious or incriminating. Additionally, her phone records and social media activity revealed no contact with Richard in the weeks leading up to the murder. Throughout the interrogation, Elsa remained calm and composed. Despite her disdain for Richard, she answered all questions directly without displaying signs of guilt or deception. Detective Cattle noted her cooperation and honesty, but understood that all possibilities had to remain open. After several hours of questioning, Elisa was released but continued to be monitored by police due to her past with Richard, which kept her as a potential suspect. However, her alibi and lack of evidence made it difficult to connect her directly to the crime. As the investigation into Richard Engelbert's murder grew increasingly complex with each interview, Detective Cattle and his team remained determined to uncover the truth. On July 3, 2014, a dramatic turn occurred in the case. It was a hot summer day in Littleton, Colorado, with temperatures soaring into the high 80s when Detective Cattle received an important call from the forensic lab. The lab had discovered crucial new evidence while re-examining items from the crime scene. Among Richard Engelbert's belongings was a small hidden camera disguised as a smoke detector that had been installed in the basement. Detective Cattle and his team immediately retrieved the footage recorded by this camera over the past few weeks, capturing Richard's secret meetings and interaction. As they reviewed the footage, they found a recording from the day of the murder that would change everything. The video displayed a heated argument between Richard and his stepson, Harrison Engelbert. The argument quickly escalated into a physical struggle. Harrison grabbed the luxury belt from a nearby chair and used it to choke Richard in a fit of rage. This footage provided undeniable evidence of Harrison's involvement in his stepfather's murder. With this shocking revelation, the investigation took a significant turn as detectives prepared to confront Harrison with this compelling new evidence, the intricate web of secrets surrounding Richard Engelbert. Life was beginning to unravel, leading them closer to uncovering the truth behind his brutal murder. Detective James Cattle was taken aback by the brutality of the murder and the clear motive rooted in anger and betrayal. With the new evidence in hand, he contacted Harrison Engelbert and asked him to come in for further questioning. Unaware of the incriminating video evidence against him, Harrison arrived at the station. During the interrogation, Detective Cattle confronted Harrison with the footage. The young man's demeanor shifted dramatically. His initial calmness morphed into panic and desperation as he realized he had been caught. Overwhelmed, Harrison broke down and confessed to the crime. He explained that he felt trapped in his relationship with Richard, manipulated by both his stepfather and his mother. Wendy, the constant deceit and Richard's infidelity had pushed him to a breaking point. Harrison admitted that in a moment of uncontrollable rage, he had killed Richard to free himself from what he described as a suffocating situation. Detective Cattle meticulously documented Harrison's confession, ensuring every detail was recorded with this new evidence. Combined with the confession, there was no doubt about Harrison's guilt. The police now had a clear understanding of the events leading up to Richard Engelbert's murder and the intricate web of secrets and lies surrounding the case. On July 4, 2014, just before noon, the Littleton Police Department made a decisive move, armed with Harrison Engelbert's confession and the incriminating video evidence. Detective Cattle and his team were ready to arrest him for the murder of Richard Engelbert at just 21 years old. Harrison had been living a life filled with turmoil and confusion. Despite his attempts to overcome his troubled past, the intense emotional pressure from his affair with Richard and his mother's manipulations had driven him to this breaking point. On the day of the arrest, Detective Cattle and several officers arrived at Harrison's apartment. They knocked on the door, and when Harrison answered, looking pale and exhausted, he was handcuffed and read his rights. He seemed resigned to his fate, displaying little emotion as he was led to the police car while the neighborhood remained quiet. A few curious onlookers watched as the scene unfolded. Back at the station, Harrison was formally charged with Richard Engelbert's murder. Detective Cattle conducted a final interview to document all details of Harrison's confession. During the session, Harrison reiterated his feelings of being trapped and manipulated by Richard while also feeling pressured by his mother, Wendy. He described the events leading up to the murder, including the violent argument that escalated into a fatal attack. Wendy Engelbert was also brought in for questioning as part of the investigation. It was revealed that she had known about her husband's affair for months and had pressured Harrison to continue it due to her concerns that Richard's reckless behavior could jeopardize her chances in an upcoming election for school superintendent. However, Wendy was not directly involved in Richard's murder. Her deception and manipulation added complexity to the case, but did not warrant any charges against her. Richard's family was shocked by these revelations. They had seen him as a devoted husband and father, completely unaware of his double life. The arrest of Harrison brought forth a mix of emotion: grief over Richard's death, anger at the betrayal, and a sense of tragic inevitability given the circumstances. The community of Littleton was stunned by this news. Richard Engelbert's murder exposed a hidden world of secrets and lies that shook the town to its core. As details continued to emerge from this tragic case, residents grappled with their perceptions of those involved and sought to understand how such darkness could exist within their close-knit community. As Harrison Engelbert awaited trial, both the Engelbert family and the entire community grappled with the shocking events that had unfolded. While the police had solved the case, the emotional aftermath would linger for a long time. The truth about Richard's life and death had been revealed, but the scars left behind would take much longer to heal. The trial of Harrison Engelbert commenced on August 15, 2014 in Littleton, Colorado. The courtroom was filled with family, friends, and local media, all eager to hear the details of this high-profile case. It drew significant attention from both local and national news outlets. The prosecution was led by District Attorney Laura Mitchell, a 45-year-old known for her strong courtroom presence and dedication to justice. She argued that Harrison's murder of Richard Engelbert was premeditated and fueled by deep-seated anger and betrayal. Key evidence included the hidden camera footage and Harrison's confession. Mitchell emphasized that while Harrison's actions stemmed from a troubled and volatile relationship, he ultimately bore responsibility for his stepfather. God's brutal death. Yulee Brake on the defense side was Barnes, a non-binary advocate aged 40 with a reputation for handling high-profile cases. Barnes contended that Harrison's actions were a result of intense emotional turmoil and manipulation from both Richard and his mother, Wendy. They argued that Harrison's unstable mental state and overwhelming pressure made it difficult for him to control his actions. The defense sought a verdict of guilty, but with consideration for a lesser charge, hoping for a more lenient sentence given the circumstances. Throughout the trial, Richard's family, including Wendy Engelbert, sat quietly in the courtroom, visibly distressed by the proceedings. They were shocked by revelations of Richard's double life and the turmoil it had caused. Their emotional reactions were palpable as they listened to details about both the affair and the murder. On September 5, 2014, the jury returned with a verdict. Harrison Engelbert was found guilty of second-degree murder. The jury determined that while Harrison had acted in a fit of rage, the killing was not premeditated. This decision elicited mixed reactions. Some felt it was just given the emotional and psychological factors involved, while others deemed it too lenient considering the brutality of the crime. Harrison was sentenced to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. This sentencing brought a sense of closure to the case, but left Richard family grappling with their grief. They struggled to find peace, knowing that Richard's death had been caused by someone so close to them. The trial's impact extended beyond the courtroom. It forced the community to confront hidden realities of betrayal and manipulation, leaving a lasting mark on Littleton. As the case concluded, both the Engelbert family and the town began the difficult process of healing from these shocking events. After Harrison Engelbert's trial concluded in September 2014, life in Littleton slowly began to return to normal. However, the impact of this brutal murder lingered in residents' minds. The community remained deeply shaken by Richard Engelbert's death and the subsequent revelations surrounding his life. As time passed, Littleton faced a long road toward healing and adjustment. Conversations about trust, betrayal, and mental health became more prevalent within community discussions as residents sought to understand how such darkness could exist among them. The scars left by this tragedy would take time to mend. but through collective support and resilience, Littleton aimed to rebuild its sense of community in light of these harrowing events.